Welcome to our deep dive, everybody. Today, it's the life of Mao Zedong. We're going deep into the sources, folks. His whole journey, rural China to leader of the Communist Party.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Get ready because, let's be honest, we're going to uncover some fascinating and controversial parts of his life.
Mao's story, it really captures, those dramatic changes happening in the world, especially in the 20th century. A story about power, about constantly shifting ideologies, and the forces shaping a nation, immense forces.
It really is incredible when you think about it, the path he took. So, to start, let's rewind. Way back to Mao's early life. I mean, a peasant background. That's not exactly your typical launch pad for a revolutionary leader.
Yeah, no, not at all. Mao's childhood, Hunan province, far removed from, any halls of power, strict discipline from his father. His mother, on the other hand, a devout Buddhist, offered a softer presence, compassionate.
And it sounds like even as a kid, he was pushing back against expectations. I'm thinking about his arranged marriage. I mean, he basically just refused to acknowledge it.
Exactly. It is remarkable when you think about it. A 13-year-old taking a stand like that, especially back then, shows a strong sense of self-determination, I think, and a willingness to challenge those societal norms. And it's not just about rejecting tradition either. Early writings, you see some feminist ideas. He advocates for women's liberation, themes that, he kind of carried on throughout his life.
Wow. It is fascinating to see how all these early experiences, how they shaped his thinking. Even before he knew anything about Marxist ideology, you can see that thread of belief in personal and societal transformation. Was there anything else in his early life that might have set him on the course towards revolution, steered in that way?
Well, the 1911 revolution, obviously, toppling the last imperial dynasty. I mean, that had a profound impact on him. And then the May 4th movement, 1919, student-led uprising against imperialism and traditional Chinese culture. Yeah. A lot of nationalistic and anti-imperialist sentiment fueling Mao's developing political consciousness,
So he's primed for this radical change. And then, fate leads him to Peking University, although not as a professor, right? More like a behind-the-scenes type role.
Yeah, he worked as a librarian's assistant, but that's where he meets Li Dazhao. One of the first Chinese intellectuals, really, to introduce Marxist-Leninist thought. Imagine the impact of those ideas, blending with his own experiences, his observations of Chinese society.
Wow. It's like all the pieces just started falling into place, And this, of course, leads to the birth of the Chinese Communist Party.
Precisely. 1921, Mao Zedong, founding member of the CCP. And that moment really solidified his commitment to revolutionary change.
But even within the party, it sounds like he wasn't just content to follow, the established doctrine, you know what I mean? I'm interested in his view, particularly on the role of the peasantry. I understand that was a key difference from traditional Marxist thinking, right?
Absolutely. See, Orthodox Marxism, they focused on the urban proletariat, as the engine of the revolution. Mao, on the other hand, he recognized the revolutionary potential of China's peasant population, vast peasant population. A radical shift in perspective, and this really becomes a defining characteristic of what would later be known as Maoism.
So how did this belief in the power of the peasantry, how did that play out in his early political activities? I know he was involved with the KMT, the Chinese Nationalist Party.
For a time, right. That's right. Temporary Alliance, the CCP, and the KMT. Goal was national revolution. Shared goal. And Mao, during this time, he was instrumental, organizing peasant movements, orchestrating labor strikes. He had charisma. He could connect with the masses, mobilize them. That would become, crucial later on. However, this alliance, it was full of tension. As you can imagine, it would eventually collapse.
And that collapse was, I think, rather dramatically initiated by Chiang Kai-shek, the leader of the KMT.
Yeah.
And it's at this point that the Chinese Civil War erupts, a conflict that, would shape the course of history.
Chinese history. Absolutely. Chiang Kai-shek's crackdown, a brutal crackdown on the communists. And it marked the beginning of a very bloody and protracted struggle, for control of China. This period, I think, truly reveals Mao's military genius, his understanding of strategy of guerrilla warfare. But it also, it exposed his ruthlessness, a side that we can't ignore as we, delve deeper.
It's during this turbulent time that we come to one of the most legendary episodes, right, in Mao's life. The Long March. What a journey.
The Long March. It's more than just a military maneuver. It's a testament to human endurance. Think about it. 6,000 miles across treacherous terrain,
Yeah.
constantly pursued. And of the 100,000 who started that journey, a fraction survived, maybe 7,000, 8,000.
It's hard to even fathom the hardships. But I imagine that this shared ordeal, it must have had a profound impact on those who survived, forging this bond of loyalty, to Mao, and solidifying his leadership within the CCP.
Yeah, definitely. The Long March, it was a crucible testing the limits of human resilience, shaping the destiny of both Mao and the communist movement. And in that crucible, a key moment occurs, the Zuni Conference. It's here that Mao's strategic brilliance, his leadership, formally recognized, setting the stage for his rise to, well, paramount power. But of course, another monumental challenge, was just around the corner, the Japanese invasion of China.
World War II breaks out. It definitely threw a wrench in the works into an already volatile situation. How did this new conflict impact the ongoing struggle between the communists and the nationalists?
Well, a common enemy. The threat they posed forced a temporary truce. The CCP and the KMT, a second united front, resist the Japanese. However, even in this uneasy collaboration, Mao never lost sight of that ultimate goal, seizing power for the communists.
I can only imagine how this time must have tested his strategic thinking, balancing the needs of fighting a foreign invader, but also the long-term goal, of achieving communist victory. Did his writings from this time, did they offer any insights into his approach, how he was thinking?
Oh, absolutely. On guerrilla warfare, on protracted war. I mean, these works reveal his remarkable ability to adapt, to the constantly evolving circumstances. He understood that victory wouldn't come from those conventional battles, but from a protracted war of attrition, leveraging guerrilla tactics, popular support. He was playing the long game, always anticipating, always positioning himself and the CCP for that ultimate triumph. And that triumph would arrive. 1949, the establishment of the People's Republic of China.
Momentous victory, the culmination of decades of struggle.
Yeah.
And the birth of a new China. It is really amazing to think about it. This journey filled with such immense challenges, such hardship, it eventually led him to the pinnacle of power.
And with that victory, a new chapter begins, one where Mao's ideology would be put into practice, governing a nation. But, as we'll explore, that transition from revolutionary leader to head of state brings its own set of complexities, its own challenges.
Last time we left off with Mao's triumph, the Chinese Civil War, and the birth of the People's Republic. It's almost overwhelming to think about the scale of this transformation that he was about to undertake.
Oh, it's truly staggering, the scope of change that Mao implemented. He really set out to reshape Chinese society, tackling everything from land ownership to the very structure of the economy. It was a period of, radical experimentation, ambitious goals, but also devastating consequences.
One of the first major things, land redistribution, which, considering his focus on the peasantry, it makes sense as the backbone of the revolution. But I imagine, this had to be a pretty complex undertaking, to put it mildly.
Oh, you're right. It wasn't a simple matter of, just dividing up the land equally. Mao's goal was to dismantle the existing power structures, right? The ones rooted in land ownership. So land was seized from wealthy landlords, redistributed to poorer peasants. But this process, it was often accompanied by violence, accusations of injustice. Sadly, a considerable number of people lost their lives during this upheaval.
Yeah. A stark reminder that even revolutions that aim to create a more equitable society that can have a very dark side, and this theme of immense progress, but also immense human suffering, it seems to run throughout Mao's rule, doesn't it?
It's a tragic paradox. We can't ignore it. Along with the land redistribution, Mao also launched the campaign to suppress counter-revolutionaries, a movement, really, that targeted those perceived as threats to the new regime, the communist regime. And this included former KMT officials, intellectuals, anyone deemed a class enemy, essentially.
So anyone who opposed the communist agenda, was there any tolerance for dissenting voices during this period? Or was any opposition, was it swiftly crushed? It sounds like a pretty precarious time to hold views that differed from the party line.
Sadly, any space for dissent or criticism was extremely limited. The campaign to suppress counter-revolutionaries, it resulted in widespread executions, imprisonment, forced labor. It was a brutal period of repression. It's a stark reminder of the human cost of revolutionary change,
Mao's ambitions, though, they extended beyond social reforms. I mean, he was also determined to transform China's economy rapidly. And it's at this point that we encounter one of the most controversial chapters in his rule, the Great Leap Forward. What was the driving force behind this ambitious plan? Well, Mao, he envisioned a China that could rival the West in terms of industrial output. And so he launched the Great Leap Forward, 1958, the goal, to transform China from an agrarian society into an industrial powerhouse almost overnight. This involved collectivizing agriculture, so abolishing private farming, and mobilizing the population for these massive infrastructure projects.
Yeah, it was a time of incredible fervor. I read accounts of people, melting down anything they could find, even their own cooking pots, backyard furnaces, all to try and meet these steel production quotas.
Yeah.
That kind of mass mobilization, it must have required, an incredible amount of social engineering.
He did. And while there was an undeniable zeal and effort on the part of the Chinese people, the Great Leap Forward was ultimately plagued by unrealistic goals, mismanagement, and a disregard for the complexities of economic planning. One of the most devastating consequences was the impact on agriculture. Farmers pulled away from the fields, right, to work in the factories. Agricultural production it plummeted.
And this tragically led to the Great Chinese Famine, one of the deadliest famines in human history. It's almost impossible to grasp the scale of the suffering that happened.
It's a heartbreaking chapter in Chinese history. Estimates vary, but tens of millions of people died from starvation. Between 1958 and 1962, the Great Leap Forward, despite its lofty goals, it resulted in a catastrophic human toll. And while Mao did acknowledge some errors, he never took full responsibility for the devastation.
You'd think after the disastrous consequences of the Great Leap Forward that maybe Mao would have adopted a more cautious approach, right? But just a few years later, he launches another massive social and political campaign, the Cultural Revolution. What prompted this new wave of upheaval?
The Cultural Revolution, launched in '66. It was a response to Mao's growing anxieties about the direction China was taking. He felt that the country was becoming too bureaucratic, too focused on economic development, and was straying from the revolutionary ideals that had brought the Communist Party to power. He felt threatened by what he called bourgeois elements within society and even within the party itself.
So he essentially decides to purge the country of these perceived threats. But how did that translate into action? Who are the main targets of the Cultural Revolution, and how is it actually carried out?
The Cultural Revolution targeted a wide range of people, institutions, intellectuals, artists, teachers, even government officials. High-ranking party members, they were accused of counter-revolutionary thinking. And Mao mobilized young people. They formed the Red Guards to carry out his vision. They were encouraged, really, to attack anyone deemed a threat to the revolution.
It sounds like a period of immense chaos, fear. I can't imagine what it must have been like to live through that, with accusations and violence erupting, seemingly everywhere.
You're right. The Cultural Revolution was a time of immense social and political turmoil. Schools shut down, historical artifacts destroyed, and countless individuals subjected to public humiliation, imprisonment, even death. It was a period of deep trauma for Chinese society. And the wounds, well, they're still felt today.
It's a challenging paradox. We're talking about a leader who achieved extraordinary things. He united a nation. He liberated the peasantry. He laid the groundwork for China's eventual emergence as a global power. But his methods were often brutal, and his policies, they resulted in immense suffering. How do we begin to reconcile those seemingly contradictory aspects of his legacy?
It's a question that historians, political scientists, they continue to grapple with, Mao's legacy. It's complex, it's multifaceted. He was a visionary leader. He transformed China. But he was also responsible for some of the darkest chapters in the country's history. Understanding his impact, I think, requires a nuanced perspective, one that acknowledges both the triumphs and the tragedies that unfolded under his rule.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Mao's revolutionary journey, the turbulent years of his rule. Now, what happens next? Mao Zedong dies in 76, marks the end of an era. But then what? How does China move forward without the the leader who shaped its destiny, you know?
Oh, it was a real crossroads, a lot of uncertainty. Inside the Communist Party, you had these factions vying for power, right?
Yeah.
Each with their own vision for China's future. A delicate balancing act,
Yeah.
Trying to navigate the complexities of Mao's legacy, but also address the needs of a nation. I mean, a nation eager for stability, for progress.
And from this kind of political maneuvering emerges Deng Xiaoping, and he's the one who takes China in a dramatically different direction, right? What sets Deng apart from those who came before him, and how did his leadership, how did it reshape China?
Deng, he was a pragmatist, a leader who prioritized results over ideological purity, He knew that China had to adapt to a changing world, embrace economic reforms. I mean, to lift millions out of poverty. He had that famous saying, it doesn't matter if a cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. Right? So focus on the practical solutions, not rigid adherence to doctrine.
So a departure from Mao's socialist model then? I mean, it sounds like Deng was willing to challenge some of the core tenets of the revolution, all in the name of economic growth.
Exactly. Deng's reforms, they were bold, a real break from the centrally planned economy of the Mao era. Mm-hmm. He opened China up to foreign investment, encouraged private enterprise, implemented market-oriented policies, and it unleashed this wave of entrepreneurial energy, and the results, well, they were transformative.
It's incredible when you think about the speed of China's economic transformation. I mean, in the decades following Deng's rise, the country went from largely agrarian to a global economic powerhouse. And in such a short time, it's amazing.
Yeah, an unprecedented period of growth, really. Yeah. Millions lifted out of poverty, and China propelled onto the world stage. Of course, this rapid transformation brought its own challenges, inequality, environmental issues, social tensions. But there's no denying it. Deng's reforms, they fundamentally reshaped China's economic landscape.
So amidst all this change, how did China deal with the legacy of Mao Zedong? How do they view him today?
Well, it's complicated, It's an evolving picture. Officially, the Communist Party, they acknowledge that Mao made mistakes, especially during the Cultural Revolution, but he's still revered as the founding father of modern China, right? The leader who unified the country, who ended a century of humiliation at the hands of foreign powers.
So kind of a selective memory then, highlighting the triumphs and downplaying the tragedies.
To some extent, yeah. I mean, Mao's portrait, it still hangs in Tiananmen Square. His image is on the banknotes. He remains a very potent symbol, of national pride, of strength, particularly for older generations, I think. Those who lived through the revolution and saw firsthand the changes he brought about.
But I imagine there are also voices of dissent, right? People who remember the suffering caused by his policies, those who view his legacy a little more critically.
Oh, absolutely. There are those who argue, that the Communist Party, by venerating Mao, well, it prevents a full reckoning with the past.
Yeah.
That it hinders open discussion, about the human cost of his policies. However, these dissenting voices, well, they're often silenced, marginalized. Public criticism of Mao, very sensitive issue in China.
So it seems that China is still figuring out how to reconcile these complexities of Mao's legacy, acknowledging the achievements, but also confronting the darker aspects of his rule. And this conversation, well, it continues, doesn't it? Shaped by these evolving perspectives, the changing social and political landscape.
And it's not just a domestic issue either, Mao's ideology, it continues to have influence, Political movements around the world, his ideas about revolution, about guerrilla warfare, the importance of the peasantry. I mean, it's resonated with groups seeking radical change from Southeast Asia to Latin America and beyond.
So even decades after his death then, Mao's ideas still hold a certain power, a certain appeal, especially, I imagine, for those who see armed struggle as a past liberation. It's a reminder of the lasting legacy, the legacy of these revolutionary figures, and how their ideas, they can transcend borders and continue to shape events long after they're gone. That's it. Mao's legacy. It's enduring, it's controversial. And I think it's a real testament to the complexities of history, and the challenges of trying to assess the impact of these leaders who wielded immense power and who left behind, well, a mixed record,
Mi-
triumph and tragedy.
Well, our deep dive today into the life and legacy of Mao Zedong, it's taken us on a journey through some of the most tumultuous events of the 20th century, from his rural upbringing to his rise as this revolutionary leader, from the triumphs of the revolution to the tragedies, the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution. We've really explored the many sides of this iconic figure.
And as we've seen, Mao's story, it doesn't end with his death. His legacy, it continues to shape China domestically in terms of international relations, and his ideology, it continues to inspire and provoke debate around the world.
I'm left with this question as we wrap up this deep dive. How to reconcile it all? The immense progress under Mao, but also the immense human cost. There are no easy answers, but it forces us to think about history and the power of ideas and how they endure. Thanks for joining us today on this exploration of Mao Zedong's life and times.